Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Good afternoon. Welcome to the second webinar in the three-part series on substance abuse and youth. I'm Laura Maloof Miller. I'm a program manager in the Wellness Department at HealthNet. Kristen Kayla, a health promotion consultant with HealthNet, is also on the line with me today, and we'll be monitoring the chat. Just a few housekeeping items to review before we begin. If you've attended any of our webinars in the past, you're very familiar with these, but everybody has been muted upon entry. That is, of course, to avoid any of the background noise. Also, at the end of this webinar, there will be a 3-question anonymous survey, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you happen to have any questions throughout the webinar, please go ahead and chat to Kristen and myself. We're listed as hosts and panelists. And again, everyone who registered for this webinar is going to receive a link to the recording in just a few days. And again, if you were unable to join us for the first webinar that was called Responding to an Opioid Overdose with Naloxone, I will also include that recording if you're interested in it when I send out this recording link as well. All right, so today our topic is talking with your child about substance use. HealthNet partnered with the Los Angeles Public Health Department to bring you this informative information. Our presenter, Lizette, was not able to join us live today. However, she was kind enough to record her presentation. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. What I'm going to do is create a document with those questions, and I'm going to send it over to Lizette, who will then answer them. And so when I send out the recording link, I will also include a Word document with any of the questions and the answers in that. So I'm going to go ahead and, just remember, please keep in mind, this information provided in this presentation is intended solely for the general information of the audience. It's not medical advice and shall not replace consultation with your physician or other qualified health provider. If you have any health-related questions or problems, please seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider. So on the next slide, I'm going to start the video of her presentation. Feel free to adjust the volume on your device. Okay. Right, and away we go. Again, thanks for joining us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisette de la Trinidad Alvarado. I am a health program analyst here with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Abuse Prevention and Control's Harm Reduction Unit. Today's training is communicating with your child about substance use. By the end of this training, you will be able to effectively communicate with youth about opioids, identify youth-specific resources for accessing ongoing support and care, and lastly, identify overdose trends in youth. So I'd like to start off today's training with discussing top 4 reasons that were identified by youth for why they choose to use substances. Now, the number 1 listed reasons was that it helped them cope with depression, it helped them cope with their anxiety and other mental health issues that they were facing. Second listed was that their peers, their friends, other people they knew were doing it. Third was to help them cope with problems they had with family, friends, and school. And then lastly, they enjoyed it. They thought it was fun to do. So this, along with other information, can be really helpful in framing the conversation, making sure we tie the subject of substance use back to what matters to youth, which is going to increase their receptiveness to the conversation and really allow for authentic interactions to occur. But just as importantly, what I also want to discuss and cover in the next slide is the top 4 reasons why youth choose not to use substances. So when it comes to talking with youth about substances, there's no one-size-fits-all messaging. So that means we need to gather insights to identify what matters most to youth in order to inform how communication might be tailored to really reflect those values. So it's helpful to understand why youth choose to use or not use substances. So for reasons to not use, youth have indicated the following to be the top 4 reasons. One is that it was bad for their health. Second was that they just were not interested in it. Third was they felt it could jeopardize their future goals and plans. And then fourth, there was a desire to make healthy choices. This could be really, again, very insightful in understanding the motivation behind substance use, whether they're choosing to use or not to use. And this is going to be really helpful information in helping us frame these conversations. So who do youth trust to deliver messaging about substance use prevention? So it's important to distinguish between the level of trust youth feel for accurate sources of information and the level of comfort they feel with various messengers talking with about substance use. So the level of trust a young person has in an information source does not necessarily indicate their level of comfort with that source. So when youth have questions about substance use, who are they going to? Where are they seeking this information for accurate information about substance use? Perhaps not surprising, it's doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers were listed as the top most accurate information resource that they go to find out about substance use. What is interesting is the second column here. Who youth are comfortable talking with about substance use. Most often when I ask participants this question, the majority of responses I'll hear is their friends, their peers, perhaps youth or adults who formerly used substances. Now, these responses might surprise some, but it's actually parents and caregivers were listed as the number one source for who youth are comfortable talking with about substance use. And this is really empowering, I think, especially to parents and caregivers to really have these conversations, to not be dismissive and thinking their child is not listening. They are in fact listening. They do in fact value what they have to say. So the matter here is in empowering and equipping parents and guardians with the knowledge, tools, and resources they need to have these conversations, because they're one of the more impactful groups when talking about this topic with. So many youth are going to show behaviors in adolescence that are suggestive of substance use, but it could also just be considered normal behaviors of them growing up, of them being in their teenage years. So it's really important to take notice if there are several signs happening at a time, if they occur suddenly and out of the blue, or if these behaviors are extreme. So the following behaviors might indicate some type of substance use issue occurring. One is mood changes, having these really intense temper flare-ups, irritability. They're very defensive, especially when you bring up the topic of substance use. Second is having academic problems. If they suddenly are having poor attendance, their grades are really low, they've had sudden disciplinary actions, especially if this is uncharacteristic of a student, of a child, this could be a warning sign. Changing friends and having a reluctance for parents or family members to getting to know these new friends. There tends to be some secretive behaviors going on often when substance use is involved. A child having a nothing matters type of attitude. So if there's a lack of involvement in something that they were formerly interested, they have this general low energy, those can be signs. Let's say this child was really into sports, they were athletic, they were going to practice after school, and suddenly it's something that they're no longer interested in. That could be a warning sign. Finding substances on them in their room, in their locker. This could be an indicator of substance use, obviously. Sometimes youth will make excuses like, oh, it's not mine, I'm holding it for a friend. But again, coupled with these other warning signs could be suggestive of them actually using. physical or mental changes. So them having poor concentration, lack of coordination, slurred speech. Also them no longer taking care of their appearance. If that was something that they were really invested in prior and suddenly they're no longer caring about how they look, that could be a warning sign. So warning signs just indicate that there might be a problem that should be looked into, not that there is a definite problem. If there's a suspicion that a youth is using a substance, it's really important to speak with them to get a better understanding of the situation, making sure we're not jumping to conclusions as well. So how do we have that conversation? How do we frame this conversation? Most importantly, what are the goals for this conversation? And that's something to always keep in mind when starting these conversations. What is the point? What are you hoping to accomplish? So the following goals should really be kept in mind when talking to a youth about substance use. One is establishing clear expectations, making sure children are told clearly that, substance use isn't something that you would want them to use or misuse. There's often this assumption, well, they should know better. They should know this already. It's really important to not assume that they already know this. When was the last time that they were provided these clear expectations for them? Really making sure that they have set agreed upon rules and really ensure that as the parent or caregiver that we are following through on them. Next is showing that we care. So reminding them that we care, we're on their side, we want them to get the most out of their high school experience, their middle school, whatever it is, their school experience. And that includes them being happy and that includes them being safe. Really making sure that we're establishing ourselves as a reliable source. So we need to also show that we could be impartial and we can provide unbiased information. We want them to be able to come to us with any questions or concerns that they have. And to do this, it's really helpful to also acknowledge the reasons why youth might be choosing to use substances, as well as the reasons why they might choose not to. And then running through scenarios. So there's no way that we can shield our children from being offered substances, but we can help them know how to reject any offers to try them. So keep in mind, youth are typically offered these substances by their friends. It's not necessarily a stranger. And that's really typical for them to be in these situations, is teaching them to say no to their friends. These are the people that they're looking to for validation, for recognition, for fun. So remember that teens rarely verbally pressure or chastise each other into doing drugs. Instead, the pressure that they feel, the offer that is made is usually casual. And peer pressure is something that they're going to feel more internally. Let's say a teenager or youth, whatever, sees other kids using that they want to befriend, they're drinking, they're getting high, and they feel like they're missing out. They want to be part of it too. So again, there's this fear of missing out. They might fear that they won't be seen as cool or included, that they don't want to join in. So really try to include this dynamic when you're having these conversations. You don't want to talk with them and provide them options of what they can do when they're faced with these situations. Really talking about refusal strategies. Some examples I like to give are direct refusal, where you keep the response short and simple, a no thanks, and just being really confident in that type of response. Some youth aren't really comfortable with that direct approach. They could always opt to exit a situation. So really having them brainstorm strategies for making it an exit, have a go-to response ready, like, oh, I need to make a call, or I have to get back to class, or our practice starts in a bit, I gotta go, I don't want to run laps, something like that. Another option is relying on help. So having a child text a code word that really signals that they want to be picked up, they want to get out of this situation. If they feel like they can reach out to you, really reinforce that and making sure that we're not punishing them for being in a space where maybe substances were present. The fact that they reached out to be taken out of that space, that is something to be proud of. That is something to reinforce for them. I've had parents share that they have their child text them an emoji, and that signals to the parent, oh, okay, they want to be picked up, I'll go ahead and get them. That way, in case for some reason a friend sees their messages, they're not going to be put on the spot for messaging their parents to leave a space where substances were. So it just provides that extra layer of security for them. And then we want to remind our youth that their true friends are going to respect their decision for the most part. People are more focused on themselves than they're concerned with others. So that's just something to also keep in mind. Another goal is talking about family history when it comes to drug addiction. And this can be really difficult, but it's really important for children to know this. Studies show that there's genetic influences when it comes to addiction. So if a child knows about their family history, they're going to be better prepared to make informed decisions about substances. And then have resources available. Really be prepared with these resources. Let them know it's okay to access it if they need it. And they can access it with or without an adult present. This is really something that should empower them to reach out for help in the event that they need it. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to talk about some potential challenges. And things I like to say to parents and caregivers is to really remember that they know their child best. Some of the challenges and advice that we're going to cover here is going to resonate a little bit more than others. And we just want to remind you that there's many different approaches. There's many different ways to navigate these conversations. Again, parents and caregivers know their child best. So we just always advise that they use a response, they use a strategy that's not going to elicit a defensive response with their child. Okay, so one potential challenge often shared by parents and caregivers is, how do I start the conversation? And timing is key. So knowing when the best time to have the conversation can be very challenging. Keep in mind that most likely these conversations are going to happen over the course of several sessions instead of just one. Be prepared to have multiple ongoing conversations. Then that way, when you have when you talk about this subject, it doesn't feel so heavy. It doesn't feel so overwhelming, because this is something that's been ongoing. This is something that we talk about regularly. This is something that my expectations have been said multiple times. So really try spreading out these conversations so it becomes normal, it becomes unintimidating instead of a serious talk. Another challenge is this fear of, okay, my child is just going to view this as another lecture. And the thing is, youth are really open to dialogue, but they do fear the conversation is going to turn into a lecture where they're told this is right, this is wrong. So something we tell parents is you might say, you're right, in the past I have done that, but this time I'm not going to lecture. I want this to be a conversation. I promise to listen and not interrupt you. So really making sure we walk into this space with a little humility. If we've made those mistakes in the past, making sure we correct it moving forward, making sure we acknowledge, I've done that before. I don't want to do that now. Let's have a conversation. And having a conversation means I need to listen to and I need to hear what they're saying. Then there's this fear of anger being in the space during this conversation, specifically anger about not being trusted. So oftentimes parents might find their child interprets their desire to talk as an indication that they don't trust them. So we tell parents to really reassure them that you're not having this conversation because you're suspicious. You're trying to help. You might say something like, I do trust you to make healthy decisions around drugs, and I want to help you think through how you're going to do that. So really using an approach where you're asking questions. Well, tell me what your approach is. Tell me how you plan to avoid these situations. I want to make sure that I'm giving you all the resources you need because I won't always be next to you there. Show me how you're doing this. And then having an I already know type of attitude. So the child might feel like they already know everything that, the parent's going to say, that a caregiver is going to say. Maybe they've had this conversation with them multiple times and they feel like they don't need to talk about it again. You want to tell your child you're interested in knowing what they already know. Even if you've talked about this multiple times, they're getting older. The situations they encounter are going to change. They're going to be very different than the ones they've previously been in. And you want to know how that looks like for them. You want to make sure they thought that through, so that they're not caught off guard. They're not put on the spot. They're not in a place where they're unprepared. Then there's this fear of punishment. So a child might be focused on the fear of being punished. And as a result of that, communicate less oftenly, or less openly. So you want to tell your child that this conversation is not going to be about punishment, that you want to take what they're saying seriously. So really priming them at the start of the conversation. If you suspect that your child is not opening up because there's this fear of them being punished, making sure you prime them, making sure you let them know, it's not fair for me to punish you for you being honest with me. I can't have honest conversations with you if you're holding back. And so really working to eliminate that fear of punishment. And then this one, I get asked by parents sometimes, is there's this fear of being asked about their own previous use during their youth. So answering the question, well, did you ever use drugs? This can be a really difficult question to answer. So this actually provides a great opportunity to speak openly and honestly. Obviously, we advise parents not to give every detail of their use, but if they did use drugs in the past, really sharing what tempted them, why they're dangerous, and why they want their child to avoid making the same mistakes as they did. This is going to really set the stage for having these honest and open conversation. It's going to show the child that they can be open and honest as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some communication tips to keep in mind. So first is explaining the why. Communicate why you're having this conversation, why it's important to you. Is it your values, beliefs, your personal experiences, the love and concern you have for your child, etc. Whatever it is, connect the topic back to why you're having this discussion. That way, this is going to eliminate the idea of, okay, you just want to lecture me, you don't trust me. If you provide that foundation of this is why I'm having this conversation with you, it takes that thought off. It takes that distrust off of your child's shoulders. And then listening. So allowing your child to speak without interruption, listening to what they have to say, and really try paraphrasing what you think they said. Saying things like, let me see if I'm understanding this correctly. It sounds like you're saying, X, Y, Z. That way there's no type of miscommunication going on. You're making sure you're hearing them and understanding them correctly. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. Timing is key. Find a time where you and your child don't feel rushed to have this conversation, and you want to wait until both of you are calm. And then eliminating distractions. So really trying your best to eliminate all distractions. It's okay to talk over a meal, but if somebody's watching TV, if somebody's on their phone, or you're doing dishes, it becomes more difficult to talk without being distracted. And then realize what this is conveying to a child if you're distracted while having this conversation. They can interpret this as you not caring. If they're trying to be open and honest with you and you're trying to make dinner, or like you're answering an email on your phone, that could come across as you're not caring what they have to say. Being aware of our body language. So this can convey multiple things, but really positioning ourselves in a way that's going to open our stance, really face towards them. It's going to let our child know that we are open to their thoughts and ideas, making sure we're not rolling our eyes or turning away or crossing our arms. Like all of these can be indicators that we are angry or we are uninterested. So really being intentional of how we're conveying ourselves. Next is avoiding a debate. So if you sense that your child is getting very defensive, we want to try suggesting that, approach this from a different angle. Stick with I statements. I'm worried about you, instead of, well, you did this. It puts them on the defensive, and sticking with I statements is really going to neutralize that type of conversation. And then you want to make sure you're communicating respect, even in the face of disagreement. And then owning our mistakes. So keeping in mind that our child does not need a perfect parent. If our child sees us as perfect, they're going to carry that expectation for themselves. That could be incredibly overwhelming and damaging. So what a child needs is a role model. And modeling behaviors we expect to see in our kids can be really tough. That's going to mean admitting when we've been wrong, being willing to grow from it, giving ourselves support to do better. So working hard to regulate our own emotions, be willing to summon up your own humility and admit when you've made mistakes. So holding this expectation for our kids when we're modeling this behavior is going to be a lot more of a reasonable expectation for them. And then take a break. So if you sense the conversation is getting heated, offer to take a break and circle back. You don't need to keep pushing through the conversation if it becomes unproductive or defensive in nature. Really agreeing to temporarily stop the conversation and say, you know what, let's pause, let's think things over, let's have a conversation at a later time, but do follow up. And then I also advise too, not having this conversation when a child is under the influence. If at that point in time, if you're suspecting that your child is under the influence of a substance, at that point in time, it's about monitoring and making sure that they are safe. Looking for any signs or indicators of life-threatening symptoms, making sure that they're physically okay. Having this conversation is going to be a lot more effective if it's had when they're sober, when they're calm. Having it as soon as they're walking through the door, after they've come back from a party and you suspect they're under the influence of something, that's not the right timing. That needs to be had at a later time. So these are just some communication tips we like to share. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide, which we will discuss resources. I encourage all participants attending this training, really write down these resources to distribute to youth. Everything I'm going to list in the upcoming slide is available to youth for them to utilize. Okay, so youth, young adults, and adults can access at no cost substance use treatment services at any provider in the network if they meet the following criteria and medical necessity. So one criteria is them being an LA County resident coupled with one of the following. One is them being Medi-Cal eligible or enrolled, or My Health LA eligible or enrolled, or be part of another county-funded program such as AB 109 or drug court. So there are fee-for-service options available for patients that don't meet this eligibility criteria. But if they do, again, they can access treatment at no cost. This is a number I encourage all individuals to write down and to give to youth if they need any type of substance use help or treatment. This is the Substance Abuse Service Helpline, also known as the SASH helpline. The number is 1-844-804-7500. This is a toll-free number. It's available 24/7 year-round. There are interpretation options available. Anyone can call the SASH hotline, including youth 12 or older. They will be connected with a clinician or a counselor who will conduct a screening and then connect them to a treatment provider. So the SASH operator will connect them with a treatment provider, or they'll be able to provide them with some referral options. So a very helpful hotline to have at hand just in case if you need that. Next is the Recover LA mobile app. You can take a moment and scan the QR code to access the app. But this is a free mobile app. It provides education and resources for those who are seeking substance use services for themselves or others. It is available in 13 language. If you want to find out more information, you can visit recoverla.org. But again, this will provide resources in getting treatment, um, um, substance use education, other local resources, finding a provider, getting a referral. So a very helpful app to have on hand. You could go ahead and install this this app again by scanning the QR code. So where can you find more support? We have the SASH helpline listed there again, but there's also the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. This was formerly known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. 988, you could call or text that number. There's the Department of Mental Health Access Hotline listed there, 1-800-854-7771. This is also 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. There's the Department of Social Services, also referred to as DPSS. The number is listed there, but this is a great resource if you need to apply for Medi-Cal, they need food stamps, income support for low-income families and individuals. They have great resources listed on their website. And then there's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA. That is the national hotline where they provide free and confidential referrals and information about mental health or substance use disorder treatment, prevention, recovery services. They are 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. So the number is also listed there. If you want to find more information regarding SAPC, we have our SAPC overdose prevention page. We provide online resources for accessing naloxone, fentanyl test strips, local harm reduction, syringe service program services. The link is listed here. You could go ahead and visit our website for more information. And then if you need to contact us directly, our email is listed here, harmreduction@ph.lacounty.gov. You could go ahead and email us for any future trainings or technical support in accessing naloxone. We'd be happy to help you out. So I'd like to go ahead and thank you for attending today's training. Again, please email us with any questions you might have. Thank you for your attendance.
All right, this is Laura Maloof Miller on behalf of HealthNet. We appreciate your attendance as well. Again, if there were any questions that came up through the chat, I am going to be compiling those and getting them to Lizette, who will then, of course, answer them. And then I will include her slide deck. So I apologize for those who felt the slides were blurry. So I'll include her slide deck as well as the recording of this presentation, and I will attach answers to any questions that may have come through on the chat. And also the lastly, the next webinar in this series is going to be on May 23rd. The topic is the impact of cannabis and vaping on youth's developing brain. So we will have two presenters from the San Fernando Valley Partnership. Now, the mission of that partnership is to prevent and reduce use and abuse of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs by mobilizing, educating, organizing, and empowering both youth, parents, and other sectors of the community to address through their collaborative efforts the root causes of community problems. So again, I will also include the registration link to this upcoming webinar in the follow-up email. So hopefully you'll have a complete package, these slides, the recording, and Q&A document, plus the registration link for the next one. So I appreciate your time today, and I apologize that Lizette was not able to join us live, but I was appreciative of her recording the presentation for us. So at this time, please feel free to exit the webinar.